wonderful talent, and I'm glad you share it with us. That's not necessarily a talent I have, but I have written a couple songs, so hopefully you guys can still hear me. There we go. So, does everybody's week go really, really well? I see some nods. Anybody have any rough times this week? A little bit? Yep. Well, Pam would love to be here with you all this morning with me. Even my youngest son would have came. She ended up going to a funeral today, and it was for a very, very, very good man. He was a pastor for, I think he said he finally retired at age 66 or 67, I forget. And I think he was in his 80s here when he just passed away recently. But my wife was the nurse that got to go into the home and take care of him. And it was over months and months that she was there taking care of him. And then she ended up taking care of his daughter, actually, as a patient as well. And then I found out things were taking a turn for the worse for him, and so did my wife. And so we went to see him in the hospital about a week and a half ago, the night before he passed away. And every time that Pam would go visit him, and not just because he's a pastor, but because of who he was, he prayed. And for some of you guys know it took me several years to actually get a job that I thought I could put my heart and soul into. You know, I did a lot of odd stuff over a couple-year period there after I got laid off. But he kept praying, you know, that I'd find the right job that God wanted me to have for His glory, not for mine. And so I thought that was pretty amazing. I got to meet him. And even while we were visiting him in the hospital, he was fighting for breath as things were kind of progressing. Sweet man. Pam said that the funeral today was standing room only. Pardon me. Some of us aren't going to know until we see Jesus again, the impact we're having on the lives of others. So it's super important that we live a life that represents the love of Jesus and not the frustrations of life. Sometimes we seem to focus on those. And big guys kind of get choked up too, just want you to know. But I want to make a difference in people's lives. Don't you? And not just for myself, but for Jesus. And just living our lives with Him in mind. I think we can make a big difference, Mike. So I decided to pick a topic this morning that's near and dear to me, and because I've actually failed at it. And I failed so well that in about a month I'll be married 35 years. And I was talking about marriage. Quite a few of you are married or have been married. And that is certainly something that Satan fights tooth and nail to break up, make hard, make most difficult. If you're having a great marriage and you've never had any problems, I'm not really talking to you. Okay? But if you've been through some challenges, you've been through those low points, you've had to work your way through things, and that can be in any relationship besides marriage. It's trying, but there's so many high points if you look at them right. It's so easy to focus on the negative. I have to keep talking to my oldest son. He has a propensity towards that. Not that he hasn't dealt with some frustrating things. I think we all do. So going back, I want to go way back. We were about a year and a half into our marriage, and it was not going well. I wish she was here so you guys see her face to see if I'm telling the right story. But when you see her next, you can always ask her if what I say is true. But, you know, we got married. Everything was supposed to be great, right? Everything was supposed to progress forward. You know, as Adventists, we get married. We know it's for life. There's going to be no change. This is my life partner. I'm now going to motor on down the road because I've got this person that's going to go with me, and we're going to do it together. and we'd take off. Well, it doesn't take long before you get a flat tire on that little marriage thing you call and pretty soon we weren't talking real well to each other. Now here's one of the first keys. Communication. In any relationship, if you don't communicate, there is no relationship. There's tolerance and eventually just pure hatred it can turn into. You got to be careful with it all. So you got to communicate. Well, what happens if you're not really sure how to formulate the words of how you're feeling and what's causing you to feel the way you do? You got to try it anyway. If you stay locked up in yourself, you can't solve anything by how you're feeling and not getting that out so the other person understands it. Sometimes it comes out in, I'm attacking you. And you feel attacked when somebody's hurting. Because hurting people will hurt others. It's just kind of how it works. And it's not right, but it's kind of how it works. So we went on, we kind of talked. We even sat down and talked with the pastor, tried to do some counseling there. Because, that's what pastors are supposed to help with. But not every pastor has been through everything, depending on how young they are. So one of the things I want you to also focus on is that you can have mentors in your life that are good Christian, Christ-following people that you can go to. And your pastor or someone can lead you to that if you need one now. And that can end. It doesn't matter how old you are. If you need that help, you're better off asking for it than ending up like over 50% of marriages in divorce, and then now you're trying to jump from the box that you're in into a new box and assuming that that's going to be a better one with someone else or by yourself. And so many times I talk with people, they think, well, maybe if I'm not married at all, when things don't go well in a relationship, and I can just walk away. Well, how hard was it to walk away from your marriage? And some people, it was pretty rough. Went through some crazy things. So, but there's other things that can happen along the way. So if you're not communicating and you're just kind of going off and doing your own thing, and one of the things Pam did to kind of feel good about herself, she went to the Y and started working out and all that stuff. Well, she'd meet people she knows there, and conversations are had, and pretty soon she's having more conversations with other people and not having any with me that aren't those frustrating conversations that seem to go nowhere and end up in shouting matches or just nothing said at all. So I was watching other people get to have that great person, that happy, wonderful person, and that's not who I had when she came back home. So I realized there's got to be some changes made. So one thing I don't recommend is that if you believe in the power of books, and I got a stack of books here, you never buy a book for your wife because she needs to change and expect her to accept it. I'll tell you that from experience, okay? If you buy it for her, a good chance she's not going to read it, and she'll be offended that you even bought it because you think that she needs to have something change, if she doesn't think she needs to change. So along the way, I've been praying about this, so don't think anywhere along the way that God's not been involved. He's involved every day. I'm praying about this. What do I do? What do I do? God, my needs are not being met. So one of the things I also learned is if you focus on what you're missing the point. That's selfishness. Selfishness in a marriage will kill it. Now, you're saying, Tim, wait a minute, I have needs too. And that is absolutely right. And in a relationship, you have needs that need to be met. But something I've learned in the last few years, and it's amazing, it's taken me 30-some years to figure it out. About 7 years ago, I decided, and I've stepped over some stuff, but I wanted to go there, it was my choice to finally say, I'm going to be the servant husband that I'm supposed to be for my wife. What does that mean? I'm going to start doing stuff for her without her having to ask me. I'm going to do stuff for her even when I don't want to do it. And when I first started doing some of the stuff I was doing, I did not want to do it. That is something she should have been doing, by goodness. And anyway. But see how self gets in the way? I deserve. And it didn't work well. And for the first while, it was weird because she would say, oh, no, I could do that. I know, but I'm up. Let me do that for you. Simple things, guys. If you're having a drink and you're sitting in the living room and you're watching your favorite TV show or whatever it is you're doing, and she finishes hers and yours is empty and you get up, go take yours to the kitchen, grab hers. She doesn't have to take it in. Just little things. It's okay for us guys to break out the vacuum. Do you know we can do laundry? Did you know we can do dishes? There is so many things that we can do that maybe you're already doing them. If you're doing them, fantastic, okay? When I was laid off, I ended up doing everything and not being asked to do it. It was kind of an eye-opener for me because it's one of those things where as you're doing it, there's not a lot of reward there. There's not a lot of thanks. There's an expectation that it's supposed to be done, and it doesn't matter whether you do it or she does it. It has to be done, right? So for a long time, both of us worked full-time. There wasn't a whole lot of time to do a whole lot of anything. And expecting one person to do it all is wrong. So if you husbands are expecting the wives to do it all and they work full-time too, I'm going to counsel you straight up. It is not going to work. And if you're getting by with it, change it. It's not fair to them, okay? Just me talking. I watched my parents grow up, and I watched my mom serve my dad, and that was an expectation of those guys back in the day. All them German people, that's just how they did things. And I learned real quick that I couldn't do what my dad did with my mom because that did not work with a gal from Kansas. I grew up in North Dakota, for y'all that didn't know that. Big German community. So what I learned, and it was a big epiphany that hit me, first time I started hearing it was, you're so worried about her not meeting your needs and you want her to change. What are you doing for yourself? What are you doing? What am I doing to change who I am to be better for her? And I realized that I needed to make some changes. And for me, it was a different mentor that I had to talk to, that I had to go to. It was actually getting us counseling. We had counseling where we didn't even counsel together because we weren't honest when we were together about how things were going. Isn't that crazy? Why wouldn't you be honest about something like that? You just wouldn't want to give all the details and then possibly be attacked. So this stack right here are a stack of books that I've read. Not all of them. Actually, I read one of them that I expected her to read as ammo. But anyway, you're not supposed to do that either. So you have to kind of grow as you go. Okay? One of the books I brought, I actually went through when I was in academy. You guys have ever read the book called The Complete Courtship? We went through this book in academy in Bible class to kind of teach you about what's kind of acceptable as you're courting a gal or pressuring them into some more physical things and how they can combat that. It's a great book. When I was teaching in youth classes back in Wichita, I used this book to go through with some young people that were in relationships that they probably shouldn't have been in, and they help realize that they could say no to some things that honestly their parents weren't telling them. And sometimes it's easier to come from somebody who's not their parent to actually reach them. So I highly recommend it if you got kids coming up. This is a great book. I still got bookmarks in here from reading this through, and I've read this through probably 6 or 8 times. So here's one of the books I got from my wife that, I want to see what the bookmark is. I don't know that she's made it all the way through. Although we kind of connected, was The Power of a Praying Wife. Okay, there's also one called The Power of a Praying Husband that's in here too. Okay, so the same people who wrote The Complete Courtship wrote a book called The Complete Marriage. And there's bookmarks in here for where were different places that my wife and I were reading it. Okay, great book, and I highly recommend that if you're looking for tools in your relationship. Again, if everything's going well, you can ignore me. Okay. One of my favorite books, and again, I got these books to change me. Okay, because you really can't change anybody else without them choosing to do it themselves. Okay. But I got these to kind of change me. And this one here, see, I used to have a bookmark in here. You can read them more than once, which is really cool. Did you know that about books? They're available online electronically, however you like to carry them around. Fantastic book. Because it's interesting. Your needs are different than her needs. I found out that there's another book. Let me grab it real quick. One of the first books we got really early on. Yeah, okay, some of you have seen it. It's The 5 Love Languages. Each of us have that. I mean, it was kind of cool that they narrowed it down just to 5. But reading this book, I realized I'm a polar opposite of my wife. So opposites attracting. I think initially it was just probably more physical. She looked really good. She thought I looked okay when we decided to get married. But we found out that there was some incompatibilities that showed up real early in our marriage. What is the deal? Why aren't we clicking like we did? Did you know I'm kind of a guy that in the business world, I'm really good. I got to have check boxes so I know my progression. You know, marriage for me was a check box. When I got married, I've got that one done. I'm ready to get my career. We're going to get things moving, and eventually there's going to be kids in the mix of all this stuff. But let's get my career going now. I'm moving on. Well, I forgot a whole bunch of stuff that's super important. What do you do when you're first courting? Well, you hold hands. You actually kiss her in public. Do those things. Guess what I stopped doing? And that's within the first year. Those little things that were important to her right from the get-go. Did you know they're still important 30-some years later? Grabbing her hand, just running into Walmart. People don't do that. Have you been walking through Walmart? Well, I'm not going to point at you guys. But if you walk through there, how many people are holding hands? Yeah. Yeah. Well, I usually push the cart too. So that's my job. I'm really proud of it. But I miss some of those fun things like that. Reach out and grab that hand. You know, remind them that I like that hand, that touch. That's one of mine. Is physical touch is like the first thing on my 5 love languages. You know, and I like that. And I like verbal affirmations. You know, I like to be told that I'm doing something right. A lot of times in life we get told the stuff that we're not doing right. But how often are we told, man, you did a great job on that. You really fixed that machine. That thing works better than it's ever worked. I can't believe it doesn't even make that squeaking sound that it's made for the last 20 years. You fixed it all. I mean, how does that make you feel when you did something? Like you really accomplished something, you did something really good. That's about our relationships too. It doesn't have to be a marriage, it could be a friendship. Your friends don't get a lot of positive when you think about it. Maybe they're getting it from you and you're already doing great. Again, I'm not talking to you if you are. I'm just telling you, well, yeah, I am talking to you. Because keep doing it if you're doing it. It's super important. I'm going to stop just real quick in the books that I'm showing here. Pam and I went to a seminar because I've learned some cool things about birth order and how that matters in relationships. Think about that if you really want to get into something. But one of the important ones that I got into for work, dealing with people at work, hiring people, motivating people, we all have different personalities. And there's a book by Dr. Robert Rome called Personality Plus. He may have written other books too. But we went and saw him, and he separated us. There's kind of 4 main categories. And again, there were some similarities to my wife and I, but again, different. So again, how you address someone is different. And if you understand that you can't treat somebody in the same way that you're treated, remember the golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated? Well, that works only to a certain point. Because if the other person, again, doesn't understand why you're treating them that way, even though it seems good from your perspective, they may take that as negative. So it's weird how some of that stuff works. But if you get a chance, start understanding the other person's personality. What's going on with them? Why do they respond to that when I said it that way? Remember, it's not so much how much you say it, but it's how you say it in a relationship. It makes a big difference if you say it with a smile on your face, but you still have to not be rude and wrong with how you're treating someone. If you're saying it just to make yourself feel good, but at their expense, don't say it. You're better off keeping your mouth shut than opening your mouth and not being able to take those words back. That's something I've had to learn over a period of years, is even dealing with kids, your own kids. So this is another great book. See, there's still some bookmarks in here by Gary Small. This one's called Making Love Last Forever. So there's a lot of materials, and I only brought a few. Every one of these books, except there's one other one here about that I got from my wife that I didn't finish reading. But I want to know what women's expectations are too. Don't you want to know, if you're a guy, what do they think things are supposed to be like? Maybe you don't care. If you don't care, it's not going to go well. So you better care. Here's the other one. This is the one I needed, The Power of a Praying Husband. We just saw about the power of a praying wife. This is something we can do right here. Again, super good books. This one here, I actually got from my wife after she was more receptive. Got a little dust on, off the shelf. That one hasn't been read in a minute. Sorry about that. This one's called What Makes a Man Feel Loved. Don't you women want to understand what it is? You all think it's the one thing. I don't have to tell you here in church what that might be. But it's more. There's a lot more to it. And that's another fantastic book. This one here, I had an adult lesson group in one of our churches, and actually by the time we got to this book, over half the people in the class were non-Adventists that came just for the class. And it could be because of things like this. This book's called Sex Begins in the Kitchen. And it's not so much about cooking. Well, it's not so much about the first thing either. But kind of read it through again. It's about relationships. And it's not just with your spouse, but with others. But this one's pretty cool. I got several copies of it, and I realized this one here was the one I was sharing at church that is pretty new. So this one here, still got the bookmarks in this one. Don't buy usually too many of them that are hardback, but this one here is for success in marriage too. It's called To Have and to Hold. So another one. Very, very few books have illustrations and things in it and pictures, but this one does. So if you like those kind of things, it helps you read through the book. I recommend it. So how many of you guys are readers in here? You can be honest if you're not. Don't raise your hand. Okay? Reading is difficult. Is reading difficult because it puts you to sleep? That's a good thing. I'm going to tell you why. I have a hard time reading books. I get sidetracked so easy. You guys been on Zoom calls or anything for work or for something? I mean, I'm within the first 5 minutes, I've got to get up and get something to drink. I've got to move around. You know, I can't stand it. It's just hard for me to stay focused, unless I'm the presenter. It's a little hard to walk away if you're the guy doing the work. But reading books, so set goals. This is some of the stuff I learned from one of my mentors. You can get through books a lot faster than you think you can if you set yourself goals. So I recommend, and I read a lot of these books going to bed at night. My wife and I don't always go to bed at night at the same time because she's usually at home doing her home health nursing notes and things in the computer. And she usually comes to bed shortly after me, or sometimes long after me, depending on how many patients she had. So I can read, and you can set a timer so you can keep yourself honest and realize how fast time goes by when you start to open a book. And it's not about how many pages you cover, because you will cover it. So I usually have 5 or 6 books that I'm reading at a time, because I realize that if I need to change, there's so many things out there. I want to try little bits of everything. But I set timers for 15 minutes only. And if you're tired and you're going to bed, it's interesting. I just read a book on your subconscious, how smart and amazing your subconscious is that continues to work when you're sleeping. So the last things that you think about before you go to sleep are what your mind's going to mull over while you're sleeping. You guys understand that? Sounds crazy. Well, isn't it shut off like I'm supposed to be shut off? Sometimes if you laid in bed and you're now more wide awake than you were before you got there because your mind won't shut off. It's crazy how that works. But give it something positive to think about. Even if the day's gone really, really bad, pick a book that you can do and spend 15 minutes on it, and your mind's going to think about that while you're sleeping. Don't forget your prayers when you go to bed either. So I had a conversation yesterday with my son, and he was frustrated with his job he hasn't had very long. And I said, you know, when you're going through some of these rough times and the customer's treating you poorly because you're not doing things fast enough because you're still learning, I said, can I ask you how often you pray throughout the day? He goes, yeah, I pray when I get up in the morning and I get things going. And then kind of at the end of the night, I pray again. And I wanted him to be honest, and he was being honest with me, okay? The Bible talks about praying without ceasing. You guys tried to figure out how do you do that? It's little conversations with God all day long. So I was talking to him. I said, you know, when you're going through those frustrating moments, say a prayer for yourself and for that person right there. Don't have to say it out loud. They don't have to know it, but you can have still positive comments while you're working through that. I said, because now you've prayed for the person who's already had a frustrating day before they got to you, and maybe that's just what they needed. And I said, I know that you need it. I did. That's how I got through customer service and dealing with people. Sometimes they weren't very kind. Sometimes our spouses are not very kind. They're just not. me included, and I'm sad to say. But it's so important as we treat people how we want to be treated. Those closest to us, you think, have to put up with more of our negative. That's how I've thought for a lot of years. And Pam would call me out on it. She says, you know, when I come into work, and I used to manage fast food restaurants for about 8 years, a long time ago. She goes, you know, you treat your customers with more kindness and respect than you do me when you come home. I had to ask for clarification. I said, what do you mean? She says, because you share with me all the frustrations that you went through throughout the day to kind of get it out of your system. She said, but you don't treat me that nice. I said, even when I'm kind of having a tough time, she says, you either listen to me or walk away. So the other thing, guys, we have a thing that's, and women too, by the way. When your wife comes and has a conversation with you and she's telling you about all these troubles and issues, it is not your job to fix them. You can solve a whole lot of your problems if you don't get in your mind and you're already trying to figure out how to help her fix it, and spend your time listening to what she's actually saying and then empathize with her. Okay? And I'm saying it in that way because I'm a guy. Because they need that from you. They don't need you to solve the problem. They just need you to know they had one. And they may already had a solution for it. They just wanted you to know how they felt when they went through it. And as you listen and you don't try to fix it, unless they ask you additional questions, because if they want your help, they will ask you. It's amazing how it works. Because when you start to interject and try to help, you ever watch them, their whole face turns and they get mad at you. It's like, wait a minute. I'm like, what? Did it just happen? I could have fixed that for you. That's not what they're looking for. If they're looking for you to fix a problem, they'll ask you questions. They won't just share information. This is a subject that we could talk on for a long, long time. I am going to be married now for 35 years, and it's all by the grace of God. Amen. It's not me. It's not all her. It's a triangle. Because remember, we went through marriage counseling before we got married. Who's the third person in a marriage relationship? God is. You know what happens when you drop him out? This can separate. Or it's harder to hold this part together. And you can have your own individual relationship with God, but if you're not carefully considering and including him or her in that prayer life, and you're frustrated, you're just telling God about the frustrations, and by the way, he wants to know those, okay? But you want to thank him for bringing that person into your life, okay? And there are relationships that end and probably should end. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen, okay? I have been fortunate that I've worked through all kinds of issues, and Pam's worked with me on how we treated each other and how we went through things and how to deal with strong-willed children. I got books on that if you want some more information. It turns out they're just like us. That's why they're frustrating. But just think about, again, and think about the other person. Again, don't try to change them. God's going to do that if you're praying for them and for him to do his will. And then work on things. I believe in continuous learning and education. Not that it has to be forced on me by work, but because it's something I choose to do. And if you choose to do it and learn from it and ask God to be a part of it, he'll bless it. And you can have a relationship. I think my relationship with my wife now is the best it's ever been. And you can ask her the next time she's here, because she's not here to rebuttal that. Ask her, is your relationship with your husband as good as it's ever been? He said it was. Seriously, call me out. I'm asking you to. I want you to. If she tells you a different story, then come see me. There may be other things I need to work on. I'm going to leave these out, though, and if you guys want to come look at them after, before I put them back in the bag and take them to the bike, certainly look at it, jot these things down. Please don't take them. If you live closer to me, I'd let you borrow it to read it and then give it back. And I do a lot of that, too. I figure if I can learn, others can learn, and if I can share, I will. But keep God at the center. Okay, pray for the. There was and I can't remember who gave it to me. It was another mentor. He says, pray for your wife for the next 30 days, every single day, and pray this week for her physical health. Pray this week for her work relationship and dealing with whoever she works with. Like my wife, in her case, is patience and frustrating doctors, things like that. And then, See how she is after 30 days. And I'll tell you what, folks. I didn't have to tell her I was praying for her to see a change. It just made her life easier. She said, I don't know what it is. I've been able to work with my patients a lot better. That one really frustrating one that I deal with all the time, that one's just, they've been able to talk to me and they haven't been so frustrated lately. I mean, again, these relationships we have, we touch a lot of people in our lives, whether over the phone, however you deal with people. It can start right in the home. And you can make a difference with your spouse who's going to make a difference with others. And it's just it's like throwing a rock in a lake. And that ripple just continues. And it's pretty cool. Keep Christ at the center, because the way it's worked for me, if I forget a day with him, that day is not the day I really wanted to have. I don't know how you are. Start it out with him every day. I don't care how early you are. You can talk to him in the shower. Did you know that? You can talk to him on the way to work. I used to do that all the time. I had 25 minutes to work. Last 24 years, I drove 25 miles one way to work. Now I'm driving 30 miles. And it's great. I got a great time to talk to him. It's uninterrupted. There's nobody there. We can talk out loud. Now, I want him to talk more to me, a little bit more out loud. We haven't quite got there yet. So I'm not one of these guys that have heard his voice in that way. But I have been impressed to do certain things. And if you feel impressed by God to call somebody, make that call. There's one day I felt impressed to call and talk to my mom. And she needed somebody right then and there. And it was good that I called. And all I did is answer and do what I felt was right to do. And it's interesting because I've had more of those opportunities happen over the years. It was an overwhelming sense I needed to do something, or I needed to walk up and talk to somebody. You got a bunch of books that back here look very, very familiar. Be loaded, be ready. So I pull up to the gas station, I'm already ready. If somebody seems receptive and wants to know, I've got something here to give them. If I can find my way back in here. Usually once it comes out, it doesn't go back in. But I'll do that here in a minute. But, be ready. Those little tracks work really, really well. Those kind of got a bad rap a few years back, and depending who you were getting them from, some of them were not so good. But I thank you for letting me share with you guys. There's a lot I still need to learn. I haven't achieved a perfect level of where it is, and I never will in this life. But the key is to keep moving forward. Let God be the center, and he'll stay with you through whatever you have to go through. And there's all kinds of things you get to go through. And he's awesome. And so a relationship that you can have can be better, even if it's great right now, by keeping God at the center. So thank you for letting me share.